drive, eh?
Are you qualified to do this?
Hey,
I don't think you're qualified.
am I going to hit anything if I do this? Ooh, what about that?
You did. Now you got a limp.
Flaccid. There's too much stuff on the road.
You didn't even let me answer before.
What?
Am I going to hit anything if I do this? Okay.
Did it hit anything?
No. But did you stress out just then?
No, but
Good.
same thing happened again. And again. It's almost like the same thing happens when you do the same thing.
It's crazy. Have you tried doing the same thing again?
In my eyes, this worked way better than that. I've done myself a boom boom.
He was even wearing his safety goggles and his safety pretty socks. And the safety guards on too.
No, it ain't.
Shh.
All of those lies.
So what you're saying is all those safety precautions didn't work?
Front end's off. Parachute test number 1.
Fuck!
They didn't hit the wall. So they didn't unpack, so you can shove them back in.
Dude! That's ridiculous.
They didn't hit the wall though.
I don't know, when these went like this, it just reminded me of a plastic penis.
Alright, welcome back to Nugget Garage. Hectic start to the year, as it always seems to be. This video I was intending to have done maybe in a week's time now, but it was going to be a lot longer. It was going to have the engine going in, all the shiny stuff, and it making noises and doing wonderful things on the dyno. Unfortunately, everyone's busy, stuff's getting hard to get. Kip's got the billet motor built. It's flawless, he's happy with it now, everything checks out, dry sump's on, everything's clearance to fit that, all the dry sump brackets, everything's ready to go. We've just been waiting on the cylinder head. Unfortunately, the guy who's working on the head luke, when he pulled the valve seats out, he's found cracks on 2 of the cylinders between the exhaust valve seats and the spark plug holes. Now, we were pushing that thing bloody hard on the 85, and I was struggling with EGT, and obviously whether it's the valve seat that's expanded, something's cracked the head. But the long story short, where it's cracked, not repairable, and if it was repairable, no way I'm putting it on top of the investment that's underneath. So Golby's hooked me up with a brand new head from Tissot again. So Kip's now scrambling, machining it for, you know, lobe clearance, head stud holes, head stud nut clearance, you know, porting it to get it back to the point where we can get it back to Luke to actually get the valve seats in and the guides for the bigger valves. There's a lot of fruit we're putting in the head this time. Hopefully we should be able to make something bulletproof at 2,000 horsepower. That will last for a year at least. Anyway, so that's not going to happen in this video. Probably 2 or 3 weeks from now, I think we'll have the motor back and in the car, which means we can still make some of the events that we're planning on doing, which I think the first one's probably going to be road trip. Hopefully a bit of testing before then, but I'll just talk through that little 4-minute montage, which was pretty much every spare moment I've got since coming back to work, condensed into a 4-minute video with some crappy music. So I think last time you saw this, the intercooler was just hanging from the old brackets here. I'd cut out the frame rails and the old radiator support, and the mock-up engine was in there. So since then, yeah, I've made a lower intercooler mount. Weight on the front of this thing's not a problem. In fact, we normally have 30 to 40 kilos of lead hanging off somewhere. So I made that out of 6mm steel and done a 6mm return. You can pick it up pretty easily and nothing bends. From there, I think I made 4-inch charge pipes, both sides, 4-inch right up to the turbo. 4-inch takes ages to weld around, and I haven't welded in ages, but I think I got there in the end. This side here, I cut and welded twice, and then in a rage fit, hit it to make it fit the third time, and it lined up and stayed there. So that doesn't always work, but it did that time. After that, I converted 180 Fab's old spew tank back into a 5-litre fuel tank, header tank. Idea is we're going to feed it from the existing fuel tank that 180 Fab made me previously. It's got an Aeromotive 5-gallon brushless motor in it, which was actually supplying the 85 combo solely flawlessly, which impressive, under 30 amps of current draw as well. So its sole task now is going to be to keep that 5-litre tin full, and then from there it's going to go to a 13-gallon a minute, you know, belt pump that's run off the back of the dry sump. The Clearview, Mick Silk bought me that for tuning his car a while ago, so that's going to be incorporated in the dry sump system. After that, Harry from Bayside Auto Body, which I haven't mentioned yet, he actually has bought the stuff crawler off me. Those plates are now in my truck. This stuff was getting out of control and not made of money, and one of the fleet had to go. Unfortunately, I love that car, but he'll have fun with it and I'll still get to see it. So yeah, Harry also was the guy that you saw in the video that sanded the engine bay back. It's no show car, it never has been, but it's all fresh now and it's back to pretty much how it was before we put the motor in the first time, all fresh. Obviously there was some wiring changes too, water pumps, thermo fans, all that junk are now under the back, which you also saw in that video. I put the radiator out of the K10 under the back of this and the header tank up high and the water pump mount and all that junk is all now under the back of the car and under the box that's in the boot that covers the fuel tank. You can see some little bulkhead fittings hanging out there. I'll show you what they go to in a sec. At the back, I think in that video you saw me drilling through my fabulous paint job to put the breather in. Everyone calls this thing a Pro Mod, so I thought I'd put like a Pro Mod vent on it. It probably should be bigger in diameter so it doesn't steam out like a freight train, but we'll see what happens there. That's fed from what did I make, a 12 litre tin under here, so we can pretty much spew the entire oil system and we won't be in trouble. The parachutes, you saw us do a test pull on that. I ended up just, this twin chute bracket came from RCE. It had a whole heap of chrome moly bars that you're supposed to run back to a central point, but I actually held it up to the original single chute pad and it was like the perfect spot. So instead of mucking around re-engineering it all, I just welded it to that and then obviously changed to the twin pull points. The reason why I've gone to these chutes, obviously if I'm trying to run 200 mile an hour, you gotta have two chutes. They're actually a soft hit pro stock chute, good for 215 mile an hour. This car's still quite heavy. It's 2950 with me in it, and after Christmas probably 3,000 pounds, but yeah, so this should get the job done. The other problem we're having with this, with the station wagons and panel vans in particular, there's like a weird sort of eddy that happens out here, current, and when there's like, it creates like a dead zone behind the car at speed, and a normal chute with a pilot chute would come out and just sort of fall down and then bang into it. It just felt really weird when the chute come out. So these are launcher chutes, just a spring-loaded canister here, and you know, it'll put the chutes out into the air, and that should sort of fix that problem. I'm also thinking about putting like a, what they call them, a wicker bill, like a little wing up here. All the wagon guys seem to think that you need that for stability over 200 mile an hour. The only problem with these parachutes is they're bloody heavy. They're still attached to my tow bar, so it's still easily removable. In the boot here, Harry's painted my fuel tank cover, so now you've got access ports for cooling system and the fuel tank. You can see where the bulkhead fittings come up. One runs up to the roof vent and one goes over to the dry sump tank, which I'll show you in a second. So I didn't have room for the dry sump tank in the engine bay, so the rules say you can't have it in the driver's compartment and any of the oiling system, so I've had to make a firewall that seals to the other firewall, and there's going to be another box that bolts on out here, but that's all in there, mounted, plumbed up, ready to go. That was an absolute bastard of a job doing over a roll cage under a dash in 40-degree heat, but I just forced myself to do it. The other thing you saw in the video is we upgraded the CDI from, I had a 125 millijoule single box unit in it before, and with standard coils, and now we're going to use 250 millijoule CDI, and we're going to see if the standard coils will do that, and I'm pretty sure they will. The other thing, I've been playing around with this thing for all this time with no bead locks. We're trying to figure out why it won't 60 foot and why it's a little bit inconsistent going down the track. It'll go straight one pass and wander off the next. I've actually measured the tyres spinning on the rim quite a lot, so I went and bought another set. And Enemies Racing has done a double bead lock on it. That was by far the cheapest way to get it done. All of these off-the-shelf double bead locks, they're like $4,000 a rim, which it's ridiculous. So yeah, we'll keep these rims for the PSRs for, you know, no prep stuff, and the 275 radials will go on to them. So yeah, that's just a quick update of where we're up to. Obviously the workshop's busy as always. So we're waiting for the engine. Kip's done that. So the next video that you see probably be, I think we'll have the motor back in 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and then we'll start videoing it going, because there's a lot of shiny stuff and, you know, exciting things that should happen, and then eventually we'll get it on the dyno and see if we can make a miraculous number, or I'll have a video of me crying in the corner because I can't afford to fix it. On that note, yeah, I'll see you on the next one.